right, so now, my friends, we need to talk about what we all came here for, and that's binding. Part 3, binding. I did not know binding was so informative. Oh my gosh, it goes on.
I know, we started this, a couple weeks ago. We're like, oh, we're just going to do binding
Yeah, I
tonight.
can do part 4 too, because it's all about, do you want to take it up a notch?
This is going to be like the binding show. We're going to be doing bindings for the next year.
And I'm just like, oh, there's so many, but
It'll be like a Netflix special.
what I
like
did,
a limited
as
run
promised,
series.
I prepared my samples 3 different ways. Just a refresher. This is close to Brenda's way. I had it ironed, and yes, I used my glue to attach it.
That wouldn't be my way then.
I know, but it's on the back of the quilt.
Oh, okay.
And it's with a 1/4-inch seam.
Okay.
Speaking of glue, all 3 of these samples I'm doing and will do tonight, I will not be using pins. I will not be using clips. Because you all know you can, and I showed you can. I will be using this. This is Little Elmer's glue. Somebody asked me, because I do add water. Why do I add water? You don't have to add water, people. A lot of people use it full strength. But I have little kitten wrists. So, yeah, that's what my sister calls it. So getting the glue out of the bottle when it's brand new and thick is really difficult for me. So that's the first reason I add water.
Did
Is
she
I
tell you
wanted
that
to,
when she was irritated with you, or when she was like, "Oh, I love my sister with a kid wrist," or like,
when they broke.
"Damn, Becky and a
When
kid."
they broke.
Oh, I don't want to hear anymore.
So I want it to come out fairly easy. I don't know. Can we see that dripping like a cow milking?
I'm a cow.
That's why there's cows in the picture. There we go. See how that's dripping out of the bottle with me scoop? If when it first comes, it is so thick I have to like, and I don't want to. So that's the main reason why I add water. How much water? It's like frosting. I go like this. Does it sound like it's moving well? Good. Now, this, if it just falls out, is way too much water. So I usually, on this size of bottle, will probably just take it down to this line right here, the label line, and add water, and then shake, shake, shake. Can you hear it shaking? If you can hear it shaking like I can hear it shaking, that is probably a good consistency. Now, let me tell you, if it's too thick and you got to put it in this little bottle, Brad is losing it over there. If you got to put it in this little bottle and it's too thick, guess what? It doesn't go in the bottle. It bubbles up and it falls out all over the place. That's when you know it's too thick. You want it to fall into the bottle, not get all stuck on the top with a big gooey mess. So I know it's the right consistency when it falls into the bottle. Well, see, I can even go a little thinner. See how it's hugging the side? You can't see, but that's okay.
Wait, you can't.
All right, that's all right. Just so the reason I add water is convenience, people. Convenience. That's all. There's no scientific whatever. And it works just as well, and it's easier for me to also squeeze this little bottle. So that's why I add water. But guess what Pines is going to do? Because we've had a couple people interested in these little bottles. They got hold of some.
Yes.
And the first 5 people who come into the shop and say, "Hey, I need one of those little squeezy glue bottles," they're going to get to pick one up for free. Okay, so this is binding on the back first. Okay, this is binding on the front first with 1/4-inch double fold. We talked about all that stuff. This is no fold yet, binding on the front with a 1/2-inch seam allowance.
And that's the magical Becky way.
Keep in mind they all have the mitered corners. Remember, we learned how to miter our corners perfectly with this little puppy or a ruler, basically getting that 45. We were to the point where we just needed to join the strips. We got to this point. Now, I'm not going to bore you all. Well, I might. All right. Here's Brenda's crisscross method. I call it crisscross method. Because what she's got to do to join her strips is, first of all, she has to figure out where they're going to meet up. Okay? Now, I cut my strips 2 1/4 inches. A lot of people cut them at 2 1/2. The process I'm going to show you the same. It's just a matter of how much fudge factor you want in your binding. first thing she's going to do is she's going to say, okay, my binding is 2¼ inches. So therefore, I need them to overlap 2¼ inches. Brenda's looking at me like I don't do it that way. You just eyeball it again?
No, there's actually tricks. You don't have to remember anything.
Oh, well, then why don't you show me that trick?
Well, the trick is you already have, is you overlap the binding one width of the binding.
Right, that's
Yeah,
the
the quarter
2¼
inch. But if you actually just cut a piece of binding off and lay it on top of each other, that's how I do it.
Oh,
But
That-
okay.
No, you
It's still the
It's the same idea,
width of the binding.
but you don't
Okay.
have to get a ruler out.
Right.
I cut it 1/4 inch shorter than the width of the binding.
Ooh, I do not do that.
Yes, and I was just going to say, if you are going to put fudge factor in there, fudge it to the small end, because if you go too long, you have to pucker the binding to make it work. Whereas if you cut the binding a little bit shorter, you can stretch it.
Interesting.
You don't need
Though-
to stretch it. It lays right.
Yeah, it lays
down.
right. But what I'm saying,
so
you've got that.
Brenda's saying I should only overlap it by 2 inches.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Picture, we're going to overlap them by 2 inches. Brenda, do you care if it's the top binding or the bottom binding that overlaps?
I put the top over.
Over the bottom.
bottom.
Okay. She's a topper.
I'm a topper.
So, she's going to line these up, and she's basically going to cut one of these. I'm just using scissors. I would never do this with scissors. I would rather cut it. But I want to show you. She would then go like this. She'd say, I want this to be overlapped by 2 inches. I do 2¼ but Brenda's assuring me that 2 works, right?
I like it does.
Minus 1/4. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm nervous about that, honey. I'm nervous.
Well, you
Don't
should,
do it.
You should have. You don't have enough space in there to begin with.
Well, I know.
Okay.
I know. It's a small sample.
Okay.
But I'm going to be able to
I
demonstrate.
like bigger.
But they're
samples.
cut on
I
bias
know.
anyway, so if you do have to stretch it, it'll be easy to pull it.
I'm not going to stretch
Do
it.
I'm-
2¼
I am going to
Bang.
do 2¼ because that's what I know.
Okay.
But Brenda's my highness. She's the highness in the shop. So she knows a lot about her binding. All right. Now, again, I'm sorry. You want to put your ruler on and get it right. But I'm not going to sew this whole thing. So I'm getting a little lazy. Next thing she's going to do is she's going to take these guys and she's going to do exactly the same thing she did in the beginning. Down here. She's going to crisscross them. Remember the little old man who needs a belt? See, I still remember the little old man who needs a belt. Okay, now Ronnie likes to use the clippity-doo-dah method. Not Ronnie. Danny. Ronnie's looking at me. I don't even know how to bind. What are you talking about,
That's
girl?
not true. I bind like Brenda. Except they'd never get the men's.
So this is the front. So she's going to do the same idea. You're going to find out. You're going to overlap your binding. Sound familiar? By the width of your binding. So she's going to do the same 2¼ Danny has to open hers up the same way. Remember? And how Brent actually put them right sides together and cut. Or no, you did this and then cut. But I showed Danny make sure they're on top of each other. Right sides up. Get your little clipper doo-doo out. Oh, this is easier on a quilt. This is such a small sample. I have like no room to work. If this were a quilt, I would have left this much space to work.
Well,
If it doesn't come out right, it's your fault.
that's fine.
Basically, this is the same thing we did in the beginning. Only we're doing it at the end. It's the same thing.
Pro tip that I always like to do when I'm doing this, even on a quilt, this works really good,
Yeah.
is take the time, fold your quilt where it's coming together,
Uh-huh.
put an extra pin in it,
Oh, I like that.
so then
tip.
you're not fighting with the
I
fabric.
like that tip. That's a
So,
good
so,
one.
so now it's really easy. And it makes a big difference on like a big quilt because it keeps trying to open up on you. And with that, and on the small one, like that.
Just like I did in the beginning. I take and I fold one of these down. I'm going to hack off the extra. I got more than I need. Oh, she's getting in close now. I'm just hacking off some extra because I got too much. Okay? I fold this 45 degree. Remember in the beginning how I did this? Yes?
Yes.
Actually, I could have done it here too, but I cheated. And I had a line. But basically, you just fold this back. Here, let me read. You're on my iron.
Oh, sorry.
Let me do this. Okay, all I do is fold this back like I'm doing origami to make these points meet, right? Isn't that cool?
Very.
Easy, right? Then I'm going to take this guy and I'm just hacking off some extra fabric, okay? Because I don't need all this fabric. It's lying nice and flat. It's right where it's going to go.
I will make up people just to sign.
Yeah.
And
If you-
all you got to do, my friend, is stitch in the fold. It's clearly visible.
The red mark?
No, in the fold.
The fold, okay.
I did that, and then I changed it.
Okay.
So forget that. Stitch right in the fold. Right in the fold. I don't have any bags,
Another
no
pro-
problems, no guessing, no nothing.
Something to keep in mind when you are ironing your bindings after you've done your quilt.
Yes.
If
You
that
see me just pop that open?
if the quilt has high loft or any polyester batting in it,
Yeah.
be conscious of the heat of the iron. As I have flattened quilts before, not paying attention as I iron.
Really? Because I am going to show you I like to iron my bindings.
Yes, I have seen people iron bindings, but if you're using like a dream puff,
Polyester.
like a high loft poly, which is the real nice cottony stuff, you put an iron on that, turns it right into some nice interfacing for you.
Okay. All right. So now, Brent, I'm going to glue this down so you can sew these.
Okay.
And then I'm going to go into. Where am I using that? Now, see, I now I'm closing this up. This is the last stitch. I get your spool. You get some more spool. We're gonna. This is a 1/2 inch seam allowance on this one.
So I need to sew that at a 1/2 inch.
That's a 1/2 inch. The other two are going to be at a 1/4. They make you work. Oh no, see, this doesn't fit. Right? That's shady.
We're gonna rate this video.
Okay, that one didn't work.
But I didn't cut that one. I just gave it a 1/4 inch seam.
And this one we said was too big, but it's not. It's pretty good.
Yeah, that was not bad. That was not
It's
bad.
just a
That
little
other one there, I'm
cockeyed.
not sure
It's
what
just a
was.
little cockeyed. And
Well,
it's,
yeah, well,
well, I know.
you knew what you were getting when, you know.
That's why I prefer my method. Brenda, just so you know, though, I would still glue. I know you don't. You just go. But when you turn it over, you pin. No,
No,
you don't even pin the other way.
no, ma'am.
Oh my lord. Well, this video isn't for people who already know how to do binding.
Or it's for people that want to do better bindings.
That's happening. Hey, notice with mine, I didn't change my foot for nothing.
It's don't look too close.
Why do you have him assisting you?
Oh my god.
It
Can
changed.
y'all see this?
It changed on me. Hold on a
It
second.
didn't. This is not straight.
I had it set.
If it looks like this, you don't. I hope I can demonstrate with that funkiness. Okay, no matter what method I'm putting it on, and this is what Brent said. Oh, if it's polyester, I press my binding
Well, as long as you.
out.
All I'm saying is.
And this is where Brent sewed, so don't judge me on this because he did a crap-appy job. No matter which method we have here, I want you to keep in mind that I want you to think about the miters going opposite. By that I mean that on the front, I have this one on top, this one underneath. So when I'm on the back, I want the opposite to happen so that I ease up the bunching underneath. Brenda, you do that?
Yeah.
Jody said that's how she does it.
Yeah. I also
What? Which way?
She said that's
I
how
also take a tiny clip out of every cut, and not a big clip, people, especially if you're doing the double fold. I like to take a tiny clip out of the corner. There's just too much going on there. Not a lot. It's a tiny clip. Because you still want nice square corners. So when I go over to this side, I'm going to just do this top row. Oh, did you see that turn?
Yeah,
Isn't that beautiful?
that's the way it's supposed to turn.
Except for the spot that I sewed. It's
Yeah,
not
I'm going to not touch
It's-
that
it's
side.
not gonna
We're
turn
going to
on
let that
edge.
side just sit there.
It's not going to turn
Okay,
quite that nice.
now look what I can do. Now remember, I've starched this, so I'm the boss. This has got memory in it. It knows who the boss is. I take it and I fold it right up to the edge, not too far. You don't want to roll your edge over. You want it right up to the edge. Now I go right up to the edge and then I just simply pull it back till it's on there. And then, oh, look at that. Look at that. I know this is going to be my stitching line on the front. So that is now my measurement as to where my fold goes. So if I take this and I make sure it covers this little fold. Yes.
See how nice my line is right there?
Your
See on
line
the
is
screen, look at that.
awful. It's awful. It's awful. And now I will go right along in the corners. I will end up gluing it all down. I'm just using this line of stitching that was created when I did the front to be my measuring stick. And I've got a 1/2 inch of play here. So, I mean, even with Brent's mess, I probably can make it look good. I'm not going to try. But I'm just, and then after I get it like this, I'm just going to pull it down. And truthfully, I would glue on the other two the exact same way. So I would go around and I'd do this to my entire quilt. And what I wanted to show you is when I get to these corners, see how this one is underneath? This one is underneath and this one is over. So this, in this case, I want to make sure I fold this one over and underneath, and this one above it. Does that make sense? Opposites. Can we see that? See how over here, this one's under, and this one's over? So on the back, this one's now over, and this one's under. So I should have probably glued this whole strip down first. Do this. I always do the sides first, and then I come in and do the corners. Like I'll come in and I'll go all the way like to that far, doing my measuring on all my sides. Do all my sides. Boom, 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 boom.
Did you coordinate your nails with the binding for tonight?
I did. and then I do the corners last. Glue the corners in last, making sure I look at what's going on the front. Because you watch, I'm going to go in the middle here. I'm lining up with that silly stitch line. That's so easy. I'm not worrying about the corners yet. They're going to fall right into place, Dan. I'm going to go all the way around and just leave my corners. Leave them to the end. And I glue the corners too. So by the time it goes to the machine, there's no pins, there's no clips, there's no nothings. And I know if I stitch in the ditch on the front, that I am going to catch my back. How do I know that? Because I use that seam to line up the fold of my back. So there's just no way you can screw it up. This one is going under, so I know I want it over. So I just basically, keep in mind it's just glue, so I can pick it up and put it down 1,000 times. What I would do is I would literally glue my corner.
And I'm just going to stitch in the ditch on the front.
You are. And that mitered corner, and if I'm not happy with it, it's just glue. I can pop it open and fix it if I want it. Come on, Brent. Isn't that beautiful?
It is. I'm not.
Okay, so now you're going to sew from the front, Brent, and you're going to come, you're going to stitch right in this ditch to this mitered corner, and then turn this corner for us.
Okay.
Everybody see how pretty it is before Brent touches it? It's look at front and back. It's very accurate. Now, Brenda's nice little trick. She started on the back, which I think is lovely. The reason I start on the front and go to the back is I don't know if I'm going to hand bind it. Okay, hand sew it. So that gives me the option at the very end. If I know I'm not going to break out the sewing needle, then starting on the back is a great option. And I would still do that. I don't like the double fold method. I think it's too bulky for my likings, but it's very popular. So now when we go to the front, Brenda doesn't even clip or pin or anything.
All right.
Let's be honest.
So
She,
just give it to Brent, just like that.
well,
that's how I
it-
roll.
Now, aren't those corners nice? Don't they come right over?
they
Just
did.
as
They
nice?
came over beautifully.
Right.
The reason I don't like 1/4 inch though is I find it harder to get to a second side
Ooh, I'm good tonight, Becky.
to look exact. I like having a little more wiggle room.
Oh.
How'd it look?
Is it where it's supposed to be on the front?
What did you do?
No, I'm asking. Does it look right from the front?
Yes, it does. Which would you didn't sew this one,
I didn't go all the way upstairs
right?
like
Okay,
right there.
yeah,
Looks good, right?
yeah. You didn't catch my binding.
But I sewed in the ditch like I was told to.
Oh no, you didn't. There's your stitching right there.
Yeah, but what's it look like on the front? Is it in the ditch on the
You're
front?
not in this. You're not in there. No,
That's
you're not.
why I
Look,
don't do
there.
that.
Look.
Okay, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, he's a good 1/8 of an inch outside of the ditch.
That's why we use thread that match.
Now, in my defense, if I was going to do this, I don't believe in stitching in the ditch. I would have gone an 1/8 inch to the inside.
Which is what we're going to show next.
And the reason, I have a reason for this.
Oh, Brent.
I can fix it. There's a seam ripper.
You don't need to fix it. It's just simple.
But if you're ever sewing stitch in the ditch, one of the things I always recommend to people is offset yourself to 1/4 to an 1/8 inch. Because if you are off your straight line, it
And
looks.
this isn't even in the
I know, that's
ditch.
where it started. It was a rough start, but see, that's what I'm talking about. If I'd been an 1/8 inch in, you can wiggle that line a little bit and nobody can tell. If you're in the ditch, you come out of the ditch, everybody can see it.
Okay.
That
yeah.
1/8 inch
You
gives
know-
you a little bit of room for a.
You know,
That's why I
that's
don't
what
do
Brenda does.
That's
So
why I don't
okay,
do
you take it just like this. So change to the edge foot. Here's
No, no. I'm not using the edge foot.
you are doing the edge foot.
I'm going to use the bi-level foot.
That's
Yeah.
what I mean.
Oh, you have
Yes.
bi-level in there?
Yeah, I do.
Alright.
That's what I wanted to show. And this is a magical little foot, Brent. Talk about that foot.
This is a fantastical magical foot.
Is that the right side? I got those.
No, I need the other side. Now, this foot comes in 2 different sizes.
Two different sides.
So that foot there, if you'll note, step on them. If you look at the back,
It has a bump.
there's a little bump. See it from the side, so it comes in 2 sides, the left and the right. And I believe it's the right that you want for bindings.
Well, depends if you're
Yeah, the left here. Well, that's,
I use
but the
they come in
idea,
handy.
but the idea is that bump is going to ride next to the binding, and so it sits down a little bit, so the binding butts right up against it, because the thick part will ride up there where that indent's at.
Yep. Y'all get the point though. You need a little edge foot, right? And you sew edge foot will nuzzle up against your binding. This is where having a double fold is handy because it gives you more room to you nuzzle right up against it. You move your needle way over, and as you're sewing, your needle is catching the front of the binding. And on the back, it's already attached. What's going to happen with this technique is on the back, you're going to see a row of stitching just below the binding that you put on. The front, what you're going to have is, you see, because he hugged the binding with his little, what do you call that foot?
Bi-level foot.
Bi-level foot. And so when he stitched, that looks pretty good along there, right? Oh, it's opposite. That's what's bumping me out. It looks pretty good on the front. But
And now-
you will see it on the front and the back.
If you take your time and clip and pin on the roll, so you line it up like you want, you can make it look better on the back if you want.
Yes, you will see stitching on the front and the back with this technique.
Yes.
Right.
But I mean, if you're giving it to a kid to drool over and drag through the mud, I
Well,
mean,
that's why you have to weigh your options, and
That's
and
right.
not everything is going to work for everything. I think what I prefer, and Danny, you would use basically the same thing I did, stitch in the ditch.
I actually do what
You do the bi-level too?
I do the bi-level.
Okay, well that would work. I don't want to see it on the front, so that's why I hide it in the ditch.
Oh, see, I'm the opposite. I hide the back because mine looks like the other seam.
Okay, well that's and the bottom line is those are all you're going to see some thread somewhere. If mine was done correctly by Brent, you would see stitching on the back. But can you see this, Brent? The part you did right?
The part I did right.
Yeah. And now you don't have to change my bobbin. Front and back,
Oh yeah, no.
the binding, the thread is the color of the binding. And if it's done correctly, you will see nothing on the front. And on the back, you will see a tiny stitch on the binding, not on the quilt. All three methods. I know Brenda disagrees because she's an old pro at it. And if you're an old pro at it, God bless you. But all three methods, I prefer to use the glue.